watching from the actual campus. So, when in IIT, three things are important, two of them have been covered. The director has to be present, and so he has given his opening remarks. Nice cup of tea and snacks was served. For those in the remote main campus, I hope you had that yourself. The third part in IIT is that there's always a quiz. At least when we were studying, there was a quiz. So I've got here 4 volunteers, and then Kashyapi and Dinamani, that's a beautiful name, and Pankaj. They're going to take a quiz online. So please come over here. My interaction with Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And if you go to their foundation or if you search their website, there's a book called Factfulness. And the author of the book is Dr. Hans Rosling. If you already know about his work, it will be interesting for you. So they are now taking the quiz. All of you can also try and take the quiz in your smartphone. It has 13 questions, and there are only 3 answers for each question which they give. So you just have to choose A, B, or C. And what Dr. Hans Rosling told is, if a set of monkeys would take this quiz, they would just do randomly, right? Either A or B or C without any extent. So please start the quiz. The quiz has a question. Let me read the question because then it's easy for others to also answer the question. So question, are we doing better than the monkeys? That was the point you were trying to make. So the first question is, in the last 20 years, the proportion of people living in extreme poverty worldwide, the answer is A, has almost doubled, remained more or less the same, or almost half. So please choose which one you think is the answer, A, B, or C. You can choose your own answer. How many of the world's 1-year-old children today have been vaccinated against some disease or other? 80%, 50%, 20%. Our team has chosen 50%. Next question, please. How did the number of deaths per year from natural disasters change over the last 100 years? More than double. Men have spent 10 years in school on average. How many years have women spent of the same age in school? 9, 6, 3. Our team has chosen 3 years. Next question. Oh, you change the answer to 6. Next, please. Okay, you can put it in 3. It's up to you. Or 6. Next. We are at question 6. There are roughly 7 billion people in the world today. That's a number, known number. Which map shows where the people live? Each figure represents 1 billion. There are 7 icons there. So, is it A or B or C? A means 1 billion in America, 1 billion in Europe, then 1 billion in Africa, 4 billion in Africa, America, and Asia. Then B means 1 in Africa, 2 in Africa, sorry, 1 in America, 1 in Africa, 1 in Europe, 3 in Asia. Is the answer C?
Yes.
Everybody says C. Next question. The United Nations predicts that by 2100, the world population will have increased by another 4 billion. This is an estimated prediction. What is the main reason? There will be more children, there will be more adults, or there will be many more old people. What will be the reason? People are saying old. Okay, next question, please. Low-income countries across the world, how many girls complete 5th grade? 20%, 40%, 60%. Our team has chosen 20%. Please also get audience comments. Don't give only the answer. There are 2 billion children in the world today. There are 2 billion children in the world today. Between 0 to 15. How many children will there be at the end of the century, 2100? Is it 4 billion, 3 billion, or 2 billion?
2 billion.
There was a comment as C. The team can take the input or take your own choice. I think there's a popular Indian quiz like this, right? Okay, B. They chose B. Next question, please. We have come to the end of it. How many people in the world have some access to electricity? 20%, 50%, 80%. I got 650, a lot of people are saying. Somebody said 80. What is the life expectancy of the world population? 50, 60, 70? The audience said 70. World population.
50.
I think they are now 60 or 70. Okay, they chose 60s. We have last two questions. Tiger, giant panda, black rhinos were all listed as threatened species in 1996. Since then, have any of these species really become critically endangered? None of them, one of them, two of them. What's the answer?
Two of them.
It says two of them. Consensus. Next. Last question. Global climate experts believe over the next 100 years the average temperature will get warmer, remain the same, get colder. I think all the heat get warmer. Thank you very much. They are coming. Wait. You only got 2 out of 13, 5 or 4 out of the 13 right. So we did worse than a month. That was what he was trying to do. We all like right IITians here. But he showed even among ministers, government leaders that consistently, people got below a monkey's performance. So today's talk is about that we, particularly as more intelligent we become, okay, let's go through the answers and then we can just browse it through. You can see all the answers. For the answer that we got wrong, the 1-year-old children today, 80% having vaccinated. This is all facts. He's giving facts. Next one, the number of deaths per year has decreased to less than half. Then he said, the majority of the people are living actually middle income countries, not low income countries. This is very important. The girls who have gone to school, it's 9 years, not 3 or 5 years. Then, roughly, the people who are living in the world, it's actually in Asia, 4 billion people are living. Africa is 1, Europe is 1, and America is 1. The other one is very important. The population of the world is the 4 billion people increases because there are more adults between the age of 15 to 75. The 8th question is very important. The girls who complete 5th grade, it's 0. Then of the 2 billion children who will be there, the same number. It's not that the population is growing, more children are being born. That's not true. If you add up as a whole, okay? And he's giving a lot of explanation. The 10 and that are very interesting. Almost 80% of the people actually have some access to electricity. I think our audience got it right. The life expectancy of the world population is also 70 years. Got it right. Very good. Tiger, pandas, none of them are endangered. Please take your seat. Thank you. Our staff, So the point that Professor Hans Rosling, I had some of the very eminent people. Before they became more eminent, I had a chance to meet them, host them, and so on. So I'm waiting for Satya to become more eminent. But I want to have a chance to meet him without appointment. So the point is that when Hans Rosling came, he was just a young professor. Actually, he's a medical doctor who's not data scientist or he's not an economist. He never had experience to talk to these people. But you know what he's famous for? You all now have it as an app in the Google, the bubble charts, the moving bubble chart. He invented that actually, and then he made it available for public domain. So his lectures were so entertaining. He would do his lecture very differently, with walking with it. He's got a lot of TED Talks. So I invited him to give a TED-like talk at the Asian Development Bank about 3 years before he finally passed away. And then he was so excited because he really wanted to reach out to all these people. Then he designed this quiz. This quiz, now actually we are supposed to sign off with an email because this data will go to them. So you can do that at the end. Because he's collecting this. Now his children are doing this work. They gather and every year they publish the kind of awareness of the global wisdom. The main message in that is, he's got a full book, is that more intelligent we are, and so opinionated, to the extent that we actually don't know the facts. Or we got a wrong understanding of the facts. We never check the numbers. We are guesstimating. But see, if you're an important person who's making a decision on a policy, you got your fundas wrong in our IT vocabulary. So, and you're saying something and people are implementing. What a big damage we could do. And it's very interesting in the context of the Nobel Prize that has been announced this year. And that's exactly what the Nobel laureate is telling. We also had the honor of hosting this Nobel laureate couple give his lecture on his work on the JPAL lab. What fascinated me about his work was he came up with an idea which maybe in the Indian context would be like known facts. People thought that to reduce poverty you have to give out cash or you have to give something in kind, which is what policymakers, politicians all do. They were able to explain that you actually need a basket of goods. Some are in kind, some are in cash, but more importantly, you have to give it to the lady of the house. And it has to be for a period of the time, 6 to 8 months. The total value of it in monetary terms is not very different, but it's how you do and how well you do, how long you do, help that person to come out of poverty. And this needs to be measured. It's not one size fits all, you need to measure it. So it's a fascinating experimental approach, like how you do in clinical trials, came up with an idea to do it in public policy. So the context for today's discussion, I've listed here 3 keywords: engineering education, or we can start with education, infrastructure, which is a passion for me and Satya, being trained in civil engineering, and then the economy. Normally we start from the reverse direction, economy, then we say infrastructure, then we talk about engineering education. I would like to go in this order for 3 reasons. Without education, society cannot prosper. Much of the challenges of society is intergenerational. They cannot be done in 5-10 years. They might take 25 years, 50 years to actually solve the problem of society. That means we need succeeding generations to have the same passion, same orientation, same enthusiasm and continue the journey. Our country is full of monuments because we have a long history. We are now taking the quiz. Now longevity is 70 years. 1,000 years ago, longevity was not even 25 or 30 years because of various things. Healthcare was bad, things were bad, or they were fighting and killing each other and so on. So people didn't live very long. So to build a monument like what we have in our country, it might require from the grandfather to the grandson of the king to do it. Who did the planning? Who did the design? I wish our engineering students at least think about it, and our faculty actually teach about it. I would like to ask this bold question. 2 days ago, I was in Tanjavur, in the Sastra University. That is like how here it is a temple town. That is a town which has got massive temples, stone structures. Do we know how to rebuild that? I would like to know that. And our university should teach that. Because that will give us inspiration to know how we do that. So this is about engineering education, not education for a living, but education for life, because that is what our country's culture is about. I know we can code something, we can do a 3-dimensional drawing, but can we make that again? Engineer's job is that, right? A medical doctor gives life. They not only treat patients, they fully understand how life is created, how we can intervene, how we can fix. But much of medical work today is all engineering driven. They're using lots of gadgets, they're using lots of scanning and so on. These are all engineering driven. But do we study that way? So the intersection of life sciences and engineering is the responsibility of all engineering colleges now. Social sciences, all data science. Earlier policies in social sciences were all made with very rough or no data. This is somebody's hunch and gut feeling. Because the social survey will be once in 10 years, I can do a sample survey. We just rely on statistical methods, efficiencies. We use some regression, some t-tests, and things like that. We just use that. If I sample, it's like I take a grain of rice, I know how the entire pot of rice has been cooked or not. We rely on that. Today we are in the world of big data. We need to have a different way of mining these data. We have a different way of understanding the outcomes, and we need to work on it. Unfortunately for us, all our developing countries, including India, we don't have the luxury of what is called longitudinal data in social science. That means you need to study the same person or same set of families for 50 years. Much of the policy of the country is based on research calibrated with data available in developed countries because they have been calibrated. You know, they have what's called a famous twin study, which is used in management school. That means my wife is one of the twins. So they will look at several twins. They have like 1,000 twins born in various countries, and then they will look at their lives in childhood, how they are. Now some of the twins are in their late 80s. Now they will find out how one of the pair will behave this way, that way, every day or every month or every year. They collected data point, and this is available as a cohort data, longitudinal data. We don't know all that, but that data is now used by everybody's to generalize for the whole world population because of statistical techniques. This is true in other areas. In civil engineering, for example, if you want to lay a pavement, we have a model which is called highway design model, which was calibrated somewhere in Latin America by World Bank. So that is where the first project they started. Someone wrote the equation at that time, and then they created a computer model. This is in those days where equations have to be so simple and the model cannot be too complicated. We continue to use them. We now have the fourth or fifth generation of the model. But what I am trying to say is, we have not calibrated this for our own conditions. So we don't even know why that equation is like that because it's now a software click a button. So we don't know how to rewrite the equations again if we have to do that. The same is true with statistical packages. So education for living has taken us too far away from what's called education for our own life. What we think as uneducated person, so let me reflect to my own grandparents and so on. This is a story that I've heard many times. Like an educated young man goes back to his village. I used to go back to my grandparents' village when I had summer holidays, and it's fun. They were in the southern India, in Tirupati town, and then we go on a bicycle, go over the banks of the river, early morning, have a bath, and then come back home, then have lunch. Then by 6 p.m. electricity is not very good, so we are already done for the day. Lots of fun. So the story goes as a young man who has got his degree, like in IIT and so on, goes back now to his grandfather's place. Now he has to take a boat. And while he's going to cross the river in the boat, he wants to have a small chat with the boatman who's taking him across. Because that's still a village. So he's asking, so what's the Wi-Fi password? I want to use my phone. This guy says, I don't know what is Wi-Fi. I only know there's a sky above me and I am using the. He says, you wasted 1/4 of my life. You don't have a smartphone. You don't have a Wi-Fi. How on earth you are enjoying your life? There's so many things you can see on your gadget. You can watch a movie. You can do so many things and so on. You can listen to the news. So the old man says, I spent most of my life without it. I think it's okay. I can continue without it. But this boy is very frustrated. He says, there's no Wi-Fi. What do I do? Because he's used to having Wi-Fi in his town. The boat goes for a little longer. Then, after a while, the boy is getting frustrated. He says, how about newspaper? Do you get newspaper here? I know there's no Wi-Fi. I want to read something. What do you want it for, sir? He said, I want to know the weather of the day. I want to know the movement of the stock market. I want to read something. What's the highlight for today? So the old man says, for us, these things don't matter. Why does the stock? I only know the fish market here. I don't care about what the stock market. I don't know the weather. I can look at the sky and say whether something is going to happen. I don't need to read the newspaper for it. So the boy is very frustrated. He said, you wasted half your life. You don't know how you will make your life interesting, how you become rich. You're not using all your money and your ideas, getting information from the world about to reach. the middle of the river and then they have to cross now. Boy is still frustrated and then he's asking, so what's the time of the day? I need to, because my phone is not working, I only have the Apple Watch nowadays, so nothing is working, so I need to calibrate it. So he asked him, where's your watch? What's the time of the day? And as you could guess, this old man says, I don't carry a watch. I look at the sky, the shadow, I can tell you. It's going to be about sunset because now I can see the shadow falling on the other side, roughly so. I was very frustrated. He says, you wasted 3/4 of your life. You're not even carrying a watch, and how you manage your time very efficiently, and be so unhappy. Suddenly something happens. The sky has become dark clouds coming up, and the boat starts rocking, suddenly winds blowing. The old man is a little worried, and then he asks the young boy, do you know this? Old man says, what do you want me to ask? What do you want to know from me? He said, do you know how to swim? He asked the young boy, I don't know why. He said, I think you have wasted all your life. The boat is going to capsize. We are going to swim back to the other side. But if you don't know how to swim, I can't help you. This is a story for laugh. But what I learned is this is the distinction between education for a living and education for life. So I learned this from a great scientist who actually built the landing gear, the Viking 3 that landed on the Mars. He was the only North-American NASA scientist. He's a person from Thailand. He comes from the royal family. He was a minister of education. He was a foreign affairs minister. You can Google him now and search. His name is Dr. Artham Jumsai. I had the privilege to know him personally. My wife and I, he has come and stayed in our house. And then he tells this story several times. And he will tell it much better. The message I learned from that is the education that we are having in this country, particularly in elite institutions like IITs, we need to connect it with something deeper. So education for life. As elite of the society, through the competition we have self-selected ourselves, we have a great obligation to build a nation. In whatever way we can do. It can be through industry, it can be through civil service, where it can influence policies and so on. More importantly, it should be through education again. Many of us should aspire to become a teacher at school or university because the education mission is an important part of that cogwheel that will turn. We need very good faculty. We were all very fortunate because we had excellent faculty teaching us. You are all very fortunate, you now have excellent faculty teaching you. Some of you need to make a commitment that some of you will become a faculty because we need the elite of society to aspire to become a faculty in the society so that we can churn that wheel. That's an important obligation. That's the first message. So engineering education and broadly education is a great social responsibility of the elite of the society. We have to commit to that. It is not because you get a great salary, because you want to contribute to the pursuit of knowledge in the society. You want to give the best knowledge, and the best knowledge should be given by the best student. And the best student should aspire to be the teacher. Then you will have an excellent teacher. So that's the first part. The second part is the infrastructure. Now, broadly said infrastructure, now I am going to talk a little bit like an economist. Infrastructure has many, many dimensions. The word became popular about 50 years ago. Anything that is below the surface is called infrastructure initially. Now anything above the surface also is included as infrastructure. Infrastructure means something like a foundation. That is how it is defined. I mean, it is a basis for the society to function. It can be water supply, it can be roads, it can be other services like electricity and so on. The important part is it has to function well and it has to deliver services to the people. That means with that infrastructure, you can assume things will work. Electricity must be 24/7. Water must be 24/7. Your public transport must be available 24/7. Like this you can name. Today you can add your information technology must be available 24/7. When we say 24/7, it has to have three quality indicators. Availability, reliability, safety. Now these are the gold standards. You want it to be available. You want it to be reliable. That means it's punctual. In Japan, for example, the train timings are up to the minute. We don't say 9:10, it will be 9:11 or 9:09 or 9:12, and the train that's supposed to arrive at 9:12 will not arrive at 9:11, will not also come at 9:13. In fact, if it comes at 9:13, they will profusely apologize. Sorry, our train is 1 minute late today, and you get notices. Because if you take the 9:13 train, and if it had a 14-minute journey, you will have something to do at 9:28. You can plan it because you know if I took the 9:13 train, exactly it will be 14 minutes of journey. Exactly, that is how they have planned it. It's all worked out. Reliability. You can go on and on like that. Then safety. Now these contribute to the performance of the economy. You can now put your deflators on it. You will have a service which is not available, which is what our challenge is. For example, in Japan, now this bullet train that we are planning in our country, when it will be operating normally, we will have a train leaving Mumbai and going to Ahmedabad every 15 minutes. That means every 15 minutes you have a train going, and then within 2 hours you reach the other side. Now, we have not had that kind of experience in India yet. For a long distance travel, we maybe have, I don't know, 8 or 10 trains in a day, maybe from very frequent destinations. I am not very familiar. But here we are talking about like 70 trains going in that route. It can be even more frequent, like in Japan, every 6 minutes train can leave. We can also increase the frequency. In China, every 90 seconds a train leaves. Like this. That's the power of high-speed rail. We're creating a new paradigm of mobility, punctuality, extremely safe. For the last 50 years, they've been running the high-speed rail in in Japan. 0 accidents. We want to replicate that in India. That's a technology we want to embrace. So that it's extremely safe, extremely punctual, and it's available. So it creates a new paradigm. So infrastructure, we need to go in that direction. We can expand this. I only touched on one aspect of the infrastructure. How that contributes to the economy is that this kind of infrastructure, we need to invest significantly. To give a context, about 15 years ago, I participated in what we now have a vast network of highways in India, the National Highways Authority of India. Now, another 15 years later, we have now started to build several metros in various cities. We are now just starting to build the high-speed rail network. Country like China, which is like our, I wouldn't say competitor, but like something to compare in terms of population and economy. They are also a very large economy, number 2, we are like number 5. We have a similar journey. They have ramped up these enormously. One could ask the question, do I have to be rich before I build infrastructure, or do I need to build infrastructure to become rich? You could debate it and you could answer it yourself in various ways. The point is, without infrastructure, we cannot become a successful economy. If you want to become a large economy, you need to have mobility. So that infrastructure has to work. We also need to have very good water, sanitation, and electricity. All of these have to have, in Japan it's called lifeline, these kind of infrastructure. That means you go check into an apartment. Before you can buy the apartment, all the lifeline has to be available. That's a prerequisite. I see, when I read or listen to stories in India, the apartment is built, the water supply comes maybe 5 years later. The electricity comes if you are lucky. So what we have got here is a new syndrome, which I have given a name for itself. Like, how can I introduce what almost 15 years ago, we did a data book. There were some cities which were serving water 1 hour a week. Water. So what citizens have done is, of course, you cannot live without water. They have got their own coping mechanisms. They have a sump, they have an overhead tank. So they simulated the 24/7 on their own. Same with electricity. There's a lot of brown out. So you have your own, UPS, you've got your own generator. Well, we think we have done a quick fix. This is not a burden that individual citizens have to take. If you actually add up all the effort that we are doing, it's a huge cost to society. So lifeline, if it works like before, then we can jump much better. That will boost the economy. So we need to catch up in a way. China has already built 28,000 kilometers of high-speed rail. We are starting the first 500. So that is where we are saying, oh, let's build, let's discuss, let's think of a big idea. How do we build a 10,000 kilometers? All of you have to play a role. As I said, this cannot be done in the next 5 years or 10 years. This may require maybe 20 years of design, construction. So several young people have to participate in this game and be part of it. We need an education system. Just to operate one line, we need 3,000-4,000 people to operate. Imagine we're going to have 20 lines like this. We need 30,000-40,000, maybe even more. Our industry has to be established. So I'd like to see many bright minds from here sharing their journey. So the 5 trillion economy, you can actually do an equation, say that what should be the quotient of infrastructure. The ballpark is about 15% of the budget every year. Actually, we may not be able to afford it. The government may not be able to fund all of that because so many other priorities for the government. We need to have creative mechanisms. In the jargon, we call it public-private partnership. So we need to have lots of private sector come and invest in that. And to do that, they need to have a lot of assurances. Will they really get paid back? Will people really be able to use? Will all these things be successfully operated? And will the government give me all the mandate and support? That's why we need the group thinking. That together, we must share that vision. So the journey for the large economy starts with engineering education and survive with engineering education and will be sustained by the engineering education. Let me stop here and open for questions and comments and so on. Thank you very much.
And engineering education that you talked, I think you mentioned nicely. And I think as a teacher, one should have various subjects, some knowledge in various subjects for connection. And that's what my personal feeling is. But I think generally the student in the class will get more information than only my specialization and what I want to teach is only my subject. I think if you have that approach, probably the width of the subject, I think student cannot get it. So I think that you have mentioned. And infrastructure wise, I think wonderful. I think maybe it's going to take a lot of time now. So one thing is that I think difference between China and India, these time scales, I don't know whether really you can match them or quickly you can complete our projects. I think in Chennai, I live in Chennai, so I think there are many flyovers which took 20 years. And in 20 years, I think the project has to suffer. So we don't know really how we have to improve that kind of things. Maybe mindset has to change, and maybe some kind of very quick actions have to be taken. Not common, there may not be something. So all these things also have to be essential, I think. So now I think we will open for some questions. I think maybe one of us can ask a question because it's a very common subject. Please.
Number of years times the increment every year. Right now we are predicting to grow at 7 or 5 depending on the number. 7 if you take it as an average expected growth every year. To become double what we are, that means if we are at 2 plus this year, to become 5, it will take 10 years. If you do the simple math, that's a normal math like interest rate function, basically rule of 70 is called. So interest rate or growth rate times number of years is equal to the final value, to double. So we can only use that as an input. So we need to grow far more. To grow far more, there are only three players for an economy to grow. To roughly aggregate them in a very abstract way. Infrastructure, private money, then income, labor. India has a lot of labor, but your director Satya and I have discussed, we are not earning enough because we are not skilled. We are kind of underemployed, many of us, for what we deserve to get, except in some sectors. Like in IT sectors, we are getting almost same wage like what the rest of the world can get. But in some other sectors, we are not able to earn so much because we are not able to do the same kind of work. So, infrastructure gives us opportunity to upgrade our skills because you need opportunity. Private people will put money if they are going to get return for it. Right? That's how the economy grows. So, all of this is like a positive change, or it can be like a delay. Private fellow will not put money if he thinks that it's not going to earn for me. So that's why they are not willing to invest in infrastructure. As I said, government alone cannot invest in infrastructure. You want to encourage private sector to also invest in infrastructure. So the 5 trillion is from that thinking. The sooner you do, the faster you can grow. So if you want to do that faster, you have to grow much more. To grow much more, all these ingredients has to grow. It cannot be only government doing it. We have to increase our productivity. We have to encourage private sector to put a lot more money into this economy to invest.
What you feel is
Yeah.
the Prime Minister's target is to get 500 economy by 2024, right? Which means you should grow by 70 or 72.
And
And more than 10%. And something like 12%. Which is impossible.
well, so we
We
all
always been downgraded to 6% today. When we are at 6
complicated argument. You can do a math on it. Actually, you can do your estimates. Lifeline infrastructure is a necessity, but now technology is allowing for them to be done at lower prices per capita. Like energy, for example, we have learned now. We don't need grid-based solutions. A lot of renewable energy solutions are far more efficient and less expensive. The area that I work on now, on sanitation, for example, earlier the sewer methods were the only idea people thought. They are far more expensive, like almost 10 times than what we are willing to pay for. So they were all like no-go. They were projects which are more expensive, we couldn't do. So there are new solutions which are non-sewer solutions. It's like equivalent of, in the past when you have to have a telephone line, we had a wired network as the only idea. We didn't think of mobile phones, we didn't think of other technologies. So technologies have replaced far more efficient ways of doing. Now, high-speed rail comes under a different category of infrastructure where you are moving people, which otherwise is done by road or by airplanes. We can't move people by airplanes from point A to point B with that level of mass mobility. It is now well understood in a city, more than a few million people, without a metro system, it is a no-go after a while, you just be congested. So, you need to invest in it. Mobility is an important player in the whole productivity equation because everybody's common denominator is time. And time to travel has to be minimized or to be made very efficient, whichever mode you take. In fact, in Tokyo, for example, you can do your Google map, because Google map, you take it from point A to B, except for walking, all modes will be equal travel time. Whether you take the metro or take your car, means that everything is equally fast. The average speed of car journey is 60 kilometers an hour, anytime during the daytime traffic time in the city. Not because the roads are efficient alone. So many millions of people take the public transport, which is predictable, reliable, available. So the car journey is also as efficient. In our cities, the car journey is only about 6 to 8 kilometers an hour a day, because we don't have alternate modes to shift the people to other modes. So everybody is taking the road. So we are only predicting the congestion. We are not able to plan. So that is the shift we need to think about. So it is not like either or, like I have this. As I said, we need to think of a 20-year journey. So in some of these metros, if you ask my personal opinion, we should have thought about it maybe 10 years earlier and actually planned and worked on it. So it's almost looking like after something is suddenly woke up, oh, let's build it because some international agency said, oh, you must have metro. We should have actually said, okay, our population is growing like this, we need this. We have enough knowledge to plan and implement. We need a planned approach. Same with the high speed rail. We need a planned approach. We want to be able to move people like this. This is not holiday travel. It's not business travel. Much of it will be business travel. So it will all contribute to work, productivity. You know, somebody working in one city, imagine if you had a high speed rail between Hyderabad and Bangalore and Chennai, like a triangle connecting. You can travel all these in 1.5 hours, every 15 minutes. The whole business productivity thinking will be different. It's not that current people are going faster. So many new travels will start, so many new industries will appear. The whole equation will be different. That has not been modeled in that way. But it has been modeled in Japan and all are completely available how they created the boosting of the economy. So the answer to Director Satya, I think it's not a linear 5% becoming, suddenly it will, explosive growth will come. You need to grow like 20% and all. That's why you multiply. For that you need like a gushing effect of mobility created in society, which is so reliable you can do. Like air travel has created that now, right? Executive air travel has created a boost, which is not possible earlier. You need to do more of this.
Yeah, most of there are so many parameters that a human mind may be error prone to come up with certain hypotheses. I am asking whether there is any particular mathematical model or computational tool where which are followed in the current discovery process, where hypothesis and what if analysis is experimented, which comes up with optimal policies and optimal decisions for the time periods. Like for example, you are saying the infrastructure, creating a rail link will boost the economy exponentially. It's a hypothesis, but is there a mathematical model and tool which really comes up with numbers saying that yes, it is indeed the case? We can simulate it and let the computer program automatically come up with generation of hypothesis, such kind of a thing and progress.
Yeah, this is how, as a metro is being built, you can actually simulate with where the line should connect. Instead of just connecting X, Y, and this one, you can actually say where you think people are going to live. It's called land use transport interaction model. This has been there for like 30-40 years. I was also one of the PhD students working on it, continues to work. And now we can calibrate it far better. They use classic models and they actually calibrate these models. And now with mobile data, you can actually far more robustly calibrate these models. So I can share those research work with you. You can do a national level model, like Germany has modeled the whole country. You can add everything, you can include all the transport modes. So these models have become more robust now, where you can do dynamic equilibrium, you can do simulations, you can predict your policies, and then you can say which policy will work which way. And as you build, they will actually continuously calibrate. So in our country, we need this. Maybe some of the consultants have it, but it should be common knowledge. In Japan and our university, researchers work on it. So students do PhD thesis on it, and they calibrate this model with public data. We need to go in that way. So I have requested IIT Bombay to actually think about this, and they now have a good team in civil engineering department trying to build models. I think they already built for Mumbai city, but now we're building for other cities. Now we're expanding for the whole country. There are things you can do. Yes, this knowledge exists. We can do even better.
Thank you.
Imagine that we actually get time so by achieving double digit. So
you're an economist student, so I don't want to argue with you. But I think that's why we started the factfulness quiz. As I told you, please go. Actually, the world has got much better. That's what Hans Rosling has said. So we are exaggerating. Yes, inequality is not an outcome which is unknown. But we are linking X and Y. No, the causality is not established. No, but causality is not established properly. So there are also methods to understand how inequality is created, and then there are also methods to bring everybody up. Okay, there are policies for that, and various countries look at it. That's why the Human Development Index method is there. Education, access to health, all these are provided so that people, income poverty will go away. You may be unequal. There may be a multi-millionaire, and there may be somebody who's still earning only,
Yeah, very.
yes, but that is not maybe an issue if there are other policies providing lots of things equitably to people. Because if what you want equitably, you should not say everyone should have equal cash. That's a different equation, right? So we should discuss that. So my suggestion to you is not to answer you. Precisely so, young people like you should say, when we become a $20 trillion economy, which you want to become, how should India look like? Please write your thesis about it. That's what I want to find out.
Yeah.
What should be the 20 trillion Indian economy be like? What should be claim success as? What are the indicators you like to demonstrate? Right? Because the Nobel laureate Amartya Sen, he was the kind of the brain of the Human Development Index. What's the next index? You could be the next Nobel laureate. I want you to think like that. That's my question.
So even in Japan also there will be some differences between.
Yes, sir. Equality. For example, Japan is known because the CEOs don't earn a very high salary. So they call it as a ratio between the average employee and the CEO employee.
Yes.
America is the world's highest. CEO would earn, there's no limit at them, 1,000 times than the average employee.
Okay.
In Japan now it's 7 or 8 times. So they don't earn a lot. So in that way, it's not that unequal.
Yeah.
But that, I'm not prescribing that. But that means one idea exists. Right?
Yeah.
So you can take that.
Exactly.
Whichever you like.
Yeah, so you said about the spending on infrastructure to boost the growth. So that is one side of the argument. But then other side also says that, for example, in India, a lot of spending on infrastructure are not necessary. So the public debt is also increasing for that purpose. And you take an example for this highway construction ministry, which spent a lot in the last few years, and then suddenly stopped because they are seeing that the debt is piling up. You say go to Nagpur for it. So how do you balance that? That is one. And the second question, which is slightly different, which is a propose that you go into renewable energy. And except for say nuclear energy, all the other energy, the study shows that it's not helping much. So how do you tackle that issue? Like your purpose was to tackle that climate change, and which you are not solving. And the cost is quite high. Although they say that the electricity cost is low, but that's because of subsidy, not because of your one-time cost is there. And at the end of 20 years, you need to take care of all those plates, solar plates. So those things also will add to the cost. So that's why I have two questions. So I hope that I explained it.
Okay, the debt question is a straightforward answer. The infrastructure is not just like building a road is not the end of the game. And this is where we are now bringing new awareness. A properly built infrastructure, and I can send you a paper on it, it will create a lot of what's called a spillover effect. The logic of it, for example, you see it in India, but it's not understood in the right way. The road is built. 1, 2 coffee shops will come along the side. 1 apartment block will be built. Now we don't appreciate that actually that has come because the road is built. But what is not happening is all that is happening as an informal economy, or sometimes you can even say illegal economy, where that is not being counted as government income, or that is not being seen as an income for the highway project. So the project looks like a debt. All the revenues that it has generated, incremental, what we call as a spillover effect, have either not been thought out beginning, or when it happened, we don't capture it. So we have done empirical studies in Japan and other places to show that this should be understood by the policymakers, and we should have a mechanism to capture. India is growing a lot, grow far more. Now with a lot of policy, we are understanding that the informal economy is much larger for our country because we don't know where it is, how it's going. It's nice because it's helping people to survive, but we don't have a hold on it. So with large infrastructure, we need to hold it. The ridership, all of those things. We have to plan for it so that you think about it, who will ride, how will they ride, what will they benefit. We It's not like, oh, they pay and I want to give it free. Not like that. Why are you writing that metro or project? Because you want to have a job, you want to go from home to workplace or home to a place of entertainment or home to school. We should probably study that, right? After building it, have people shifted into it. Now I see some of the metro projects, the people are not taking it because I have not thought about his last mile or first mile. The metro is there from A to B, but he's living somewhere there. He's saying, if I have to go to metro and then take, I might as well go straight because the travel time is same. So you make this infeasible or futile. But in Japan and all, what happens? Because it's built so well, anywhere you live in Tokyo, within 5 to 7 minutes of walk distance, you will reach a station. That means you don't need to take any other mode of transport. Not that they had it in day one. They constantly think about it. In fact, when you go to rent an apartment, the first data I will give you is that what's the walk distance from the nearest station. That's your first indicator, right? So it's metro-based city. We call it transit-oriented development in the vocabulary. So we need to think like that. We are just beginning to understand it. This is a subject we should study here.
But Japan is a very unique country.
No, we are not unique. They were as poor as we were. That's the book I'll share with you.
Yeah, but the population density is quite high in Japan. In Tokyo, for example.
Yeah, we are no different. These are all. That's what I'm saying. Let's be factfulness. That is not opinion. I know we argue very well.
No,
I'll come to the engineering part of this. The renewable energy.
Yeah, you have to.
No, I didn't answer this. The renewable energy part of it, again, see, we have a big challenge that our energy demand is very high in our country. And we don't have capacity to generate all the types of energy. So we have no choice to embrace new forms of energy which are renewable and which can be done differently. Now, your cost of that solar cells, panels, all those things, these are coming down significantly. We should not underestimate the power of technology and innovation. And we should contribute to that. Rather than grieving over it, oh, who will pay for it? Give me a tracking solution. We have a business. Because business thrives on solving problems. I would like every IITian to be an entrepreneur who creates jobs. He picks up a problem, solves it. That should be our dream because we are the super elite of this country. If you and I don't solve the problem of this country, who will solve it? There's nobody else there. Collectively, we are the super elite. We have to think about it and say, let's crack it. Let's find out what can be done rather than worrying about the problem. We should say, let me cross the bridge. Let's see what it is. Go with the grand challenge. Crack it. Solve it. Create a business out of it. That should be the thinking. China has built out the infrastructure. So the government announced we're going to build next 20,000 kilometers. The entire industry got organized to create that kind of manpower to build. Because they know it's going to happen. So they are so good that they can build anywhere in the world the same thing. World class. We are doing that in IT. We should do a lot more in every area. Engineering colleges have a unique responsibility and a business opportunity. Like $5 million is all business for all of us. We can make it happen. Each of you will become a billionaire at that. That's the idea we should think.
So should we reinforce the existing infrastructure or should we go for the technology which is existing in Japan or other developments? For example, in Chennai, there was a very good bus transit system and a very good MRT, but they opted to go for a metro line. But in case of Surat, they have a very good BRT system, which is working very fine for them. So should we try to reinforce the existing infrastructure or should we go for
There's no one answer. Both are good actually. So that's a good question. These are the things we should study rather than just read the newspaper. We can research into it. How Surat has done, what are the pros and cons, what Chennai has done. Because these problems will continue to come and we need to continue to solve it. We should have a good database and very good understanding from an intellectual perspective, from a civil engineering perspective, from a planning perspective, from a finance perspective, and say that how can we done, which one is good. And all examples are good actually because you can compare, contrast. So I'm not saying which one is greater. To me, all are fine. So long as we survive and learn and improve. That should be our attitude.
Sir, my question is, in order to build up this infrastructure, what kind of strategy India needs to take. That means, it should be a balanced growth strategy or unbalanced growth strategy. Balanced means let all the sectors grow simultaneously, whereas unbalanced means one sector will grow and that will help in growing other sectors. So what India should follow and what is being followed in Japan?
I may be biased in this, but my understanding is that there are certain, and I think this government, some of the priorities are extremely on board. For example, sanitation and water is a lifeline. I can say it in this way. Economies which couldn't solve the water and sanitation problem could not grow either. We all know that if I don't have drinking water, you won't be able to survive. So somehow we have to fix it. Like borrow steel, whatever you have to do. But if we can provide it in the most effective way, and I actually want to congratulate your director, because he and I share this passion for drinking water. One of the things he did on this borrowed campus, put all water filter and other water in our campus. So he said, we don't want students to buy water. The big service. It's a paradigm shift. When you have it, you don't know it. When you don't have it, it's a huge burden. All the toilets are fixed in this building. So we were renting a building. But this building, all the infrastructure is different from the original owner of the campus, right? Because we want to have a new start. So water and sanitation come in that category. Electricity also come in that category. So they all need to be fixed, whether you are poor or not. Now its evidence shows that you have to fix it even though you are poor. Then you grow exponentially. Other things, priority is different. Like your transport infrastructure. Housing is a very big infrastructure. We are struggling with that. We need to have nice middle class housing. Like Singapore is a classic example of that. Every citizen is entitled to a house. Not like a Malaysian house. It's just a 3-room apartment like that. But they assure you that. Now the economy has grown so big. There's a lot of evidence that shows that that's a defining factor. If you can do it very well, great. So like that we can discuss.
Yeah, I think last question.
What corrective measures do you suggest for a shift from education for living to education for life?
My wife and I talk about it a lot. So, education for living is what everybody understands or appreciates. You want to become rich, you want to have a good life, you want to have a good family. Education for life is to give back to society. So, our country has that great heritage. In fact, Professor Raju was talking to me the difference between philanthropy and the difference between altruism. So, we come up with a great heritage in our country where we give back to society. And predominantly, education was free. That's right. So, when education is given free versus when education is given for a fee, the motivation, I was very fortunate. I always studied on a scholarship all the time. My father was a school teacher, and when I studied, I couldn't afford any of the fees, and I just got scholarship all the time in my life. So my motivation is very different, and I'm confirming that. So education for life is to find the true purpose of our existence. And our society, our culture has this great ethos where we really want to inspire the whole society, the global society, right? So that we want to give back to society. Because only by giving back to society, society will continue. So to me, that is the education for life.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. I think